computer. Okay. All right. I'm going to stand up. Might keep me more awake. So we consume protein. It's long chain polypeptides that are linked together with a peptide bond. When it gets to the stomach, right? It's in the stomach that chemical digestion of protein begins. And what happens is the acid in the stomach starts to break those peptide bonds as well as pepsin. So we denature the protein into smaller peptide links before it gets digested in the small intestine. Oh, what do I have here? Oh, sorry. My husband has to close the door. I talk loud. So here we go. Yeah, we denature and digest protein after we eat it, because right now, when we consume food, it's no use to our cells until we denature protein, we digest it, it gets absorbed and transported from the intestinal tract to the cells. And it's inside the cells that the messages are then given to what the body is going to do with the protein. Chemical digestion of protein begins in the mouth, the stomach, the small intestine, or the liver. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so the operative word in this question is chemical digestion. Come on, show it. Mechanical digestion of protein begins in the mouth, but we don't have any enzymes in the mouth to chemically digest protein. It's not until protein crosses over the epiglottis, goes down the esophagus, crosses over the cardiac sphincter, and gets into the stomach that the chemical digestion begins with the actions of hydrochloric acid and pepsin. Chemical digestion does continue in the small intestine with the proteases from the pancreas and the intestinal villi, but chemical digestion begins in the stomach.
Professor, isn't when the food enters our mouth, our saliva, don't they have the enzymes?
I'm glad you asked that. What's the enzyme in the mouth that we have? We have salivary, meaning saliva, amylase. Chemical digestion of carbohydrate begins in the mouth.
Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay. I got confused with that.
So chemical digestion of protein begins in the stomach. Mechanical digestion of protein begins in the mouth. I'm glad you asked that. In the video, the example of protein denaturation included Miley Cyrus eating an egg, pouring acid on macaroni and cheese, Walter White cooking meth, or Nicole Kidman getting a hair permanent. What was the example of protein denaturation? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Was Nicole Kidman getting a perm? Because of course it was. And this was the example, all right? Your hair is made up of protein. The protein in the hair is called keratin. You don't need to remember that, but what's happening when your hair is getting permed, as it were, is that a chemical is being put on your hair, and it's denaturing the protein and then reshaping it into a different structure. And one of the things I like to say about proteins is that structure dictates function. And in this case, the function is to have curly hair. So again, what's happening is that a chemical is being poured on to her hair, and it's breaking the bonds that make up the proteins in the keratin, and then they're reshaped when it's wrapped around or whatever gets done when somebody has a perm. And that leads to the new style. Has anybody ever hard-boiled an egg wrong? Like, have you ever hard-boiled an egg and then it cracked in the water? Nobody's ever done that? I'm the only one that's done that. What happens when the egg cracks in the water? Well, I'm not suggesting that you do it, but should you want to try this little experiment, what happens is that clear albumin, that's the protein, the egg white, leaks out into the boiling water, and it changes shape and it changes color. It becomes the white of the hard-boiled egg, because what's happening is something else that denatures protein is heat. And what's happening is that heat is breaking apart the bonds that hold those amino acids together, and it's changing the shape. And going along with this structure dictates function, a cooked egg is much more digestible. The nutrients are much more bioavailable in that cooked form than in raw form. Okay, so heat is something that also denatures protein. Acid in the stomach denatures protein. We have a number of different things that denature protein, and Nicole Kidman's hair is one of them. Pregnancy is an example of positive nitrogen balance, negative nitrogen balance, or nitrogen equilibrium. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Pregnancy is an example of positive nitrogen balance. Why is it positive nitrogen balance? What does positive nitrogen balance mean?
That nitrogen consumption is greater than nitrogen excretion.
Right. And what that means is that nitrogen is being used. And in this case, nitrogen is being used to synthesize new tissue. That's why it's called positive nitrogen balance. Oops, let's see. Right, so when you have positive nitrogen balance, like Ali said, nitrogen intake or consumption is greater than nitrogen that's being excreted by the body. And so that means that nitrogen, that those amino acids are being used to synthesize new tissue, whether it's pregnancy, a growing child, an adolescent going through their growth spurt, that's positive nitrogen balance. What would be an example of what's going on with negative nitrogen balance? Oops, not yet. Kevin, what's going on with negative nitrogen balance?
Would it be like malnutrition?
Non-nutrition. I don't know. What do you think that means?
So like if your body is releasing more nitrogen than the intake.
Okay. And why do you think that would be happening?
Either because of a lack of consumption or because of like genetic disorder.
Okay, so that's one. So what did we just say is going on with the nitrogens in positive nitrogen balance? You want to phone a friend?
Yeah.
Somebody want to help him out? What's going on?
Consumption is greater than excretion,
And what's going on
but in the
during?
case of negative, the excretion is greater than the consumption.
All right,
It
and
is negative because you can have like an illness.
you could have it because the body is losing protein. The body is breaking down protein for energy, which is not what the body wants to do. Okay, so we're losing nitrogen, we're losing muscle mass, we're losing protein. So that could be an illness, right? It could be somebody, a burn patient who's lost tissue,
An infection.
an infection. All right, so that would be negative nitrogen balance. And nitrogen equilibrium is when intake and expenditure are the same. And the example that's always given is a healthy person who's, the picture always has them exercising because all healthy people exercise. It is essential to eat extra protein to gain muscle mass, true or false? Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Right, the answer is false. Did you think it would be in a nutrition class? For in a pound of muscle, and I talk about this, a pound of muscle is 20% protein. So that's 20% of 454 grams or 105 grams of that pound come from protein. And in order to gain a pound of muscle in a healthy way over a 2-week period, an athlete only needs to consume an extra 7 to 8 grams of protein per day in addition to what they normally consume. And these are some examples of what that 7 to 8 grams of protein, where that can come from. So when I'm asked, what do I think of protein powder? I don't think it's necessary to gain muscle mass. When you do your diet projects though, if you're taking protein powders, whatever supplements you're taking, go ahead and continue to take them. However, do not include them in your food records because I want you to see whether or not you're getting adequate dietary protein without the supplement. I have yet to have anybody who's come forth and said unto me, I stopped taking my protein in light of the knowledge I got, because their bias is that they need to keep taking it. But from a metabolic standpoint, from a science standpoint, this is what it takes to gain in a healthy manner. Okay, let's have some current events. Let me just turn this off. Gabby.
Yeah, so my current event is on the fad diet F factor. I don't know if you guys have heard of it and like whether it's safe or not. So it's a very high fiber diet, and on their website they claim that the fiber has 0 calories, so you get to fill up without filling out. So basically dieters must eat 35 grams of fiber per day. That's 7 to 10 more grams than what is recommended in a regular day. So, and they have to limit their net carb intake while getting 30% of their calories from fat and 10 to 14 ounces of lean protein per day. They also are required to drink 3 liters of water per day so that the fiber has proper effects on the body. So experts now say that the F factor diet is said to help you lose weight in the short term, but is not sustainable in the long term because it's just another low calorie diet with a catchy name. It's not nutritionally sound because the total energy looks to fall below what most adults would need to eat in a day. So basically they say that it's like starvation. So there's a quote that says, experts say that calorie level, which appears to be a one-size-fits-all approach in this diet, looks to be lower than the calorie levels in landmark starvation studies.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so, and then they just talk about how starvation, people who did this diet and experienced these starvation effects said they experienced significant drops in strength, body temperature, heart rate, while increasing levels of depression, irritability, and fatigue.
Oh my.
So the F factor diet is probably not a good idea. And aside from having all the side effects mentioned above. Too much fiber can cause GI disruptions such as bloating, abdominal pain, and constipations. So overall, it's not a good idea. And while like focus on fiber isn't necessarily bad, you're better off eating plenty of like fiber-rich foods such as vegetable, whole grains, nuts, seeds, without like severely restricting other parts of your diet.
Where are they suggesting where's the fiber coming from? Like, are you eating fiber supplements or are you eating
F
foods?
Factor has their own like crackers and proteins and
course.
their mixes that they sell.
So there's a red flag as well. They're selling something in addition to their diet. They're selling a product that you need to consume in order to fulfill the requirements of their diet. So that's a red flag that you should know. I did write down a couple things. One, 25 grams of fiber. It's between 25 and 38 grams of fiber is recommended. I put it in it's in the video. Again, I wouldn't ask you those numbers, but 25 for women, 38 for men, because men tend to eat more. So so 25 is not unusual. However, it's uncommon.
It was 35, not 25.
Oh, 35.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. However, when I've worked with folks who needed to increase their dietary fiber, I would say, you know, like if you're only eating 10 grams of fiber a day, let's go to 15 grams for the next month so that your body can adjust to that fiber intake. If you suddenly went from 10 grams a day to 35, you would have serious digestive issues. And the thing about fiber, and I think I talked somewhat about this in the videos, it moves through your large intestine. That's why, and it's supposed to, I talked about the different benefits of fiber, but you do need to drink a lot of water if you're consuming a lot of fiber. Think about fiber as a sponge. That's what I wrote down here, sponge analogy. If you have a sponge moving through your large intestine, and y'all should be familiar with the large intestine, having gone, pun alert, gone through the intestinal tract, if this fiber going through your large intestine is dry, think of a dry, if you're not getting enough water, think of a dry sponge moving through your large intestine. Not very comfortable, but when you have adequate fluid, then it would be a moisture sponge and things should move more easily. So whenever you're increasing dietary fiber or you hear about these kinds of things, yes, absolutely, fluid, lots of fluid. Wow, thank you. All right, Jordana, did I get your name right?
Hi, Georgia. It's okay.
Georgia, gosh.
Okay, so I also was going to talk about blue zones. Jackie talked about it on Monday. I think we came across the same article, but the reason I was really intrigued by it is because the Zac Efron documentary on Netflix came out this summer, and episode 4, they follow Sardinia, a small town named Seulo, and this is one of the blue zones. And we meet 2 nutritionists who have done a lot of work behind the blue zone diet, and they describe it the same way Jackie did, like high vegetable, low protein.
Yeah.
And like it's a lot to do with lifestyle as well. But one thing they mentioned that I wasn't in the article I found was the mTOR protein. And they basically say it's mTOR protein mechanistic target.
M-TOR, okay.
Yeah. And they said it's a regulator of cellular growth in the body. And when you're young and growing, you need rapid cellular growth. But when you're past middle age, it's better to slow that cellular process down by eating less protein. And they say that too much of it may lead to mutated cells, cancer, or may accelerate any age-related disease. So they attribute this town, Seulo, they attribute their longevity to not a lot of protein when they're older, and they gave us a few case studies. They follow centenarians in the town who they've researched and studied for a while, and they show that they still have cognitive abilities and they're able to form tests that like show their mental capacity is still there. So I just thought that was a different perspective than I saw in the article I read, and I thought it was really interesting, and it made me debate whether I need to be eating so much protein. So,
well, I think that I would be curious where they studied this mTOR, because was it on living people? Were they taking, tissue samples? How were they measuring it, and what were they measuring it from? I don't know. It could very well have been taking samples from the folks that live there. Case studies are exactly that, and they can be very compelling, and they're not clinical research, but you know, this is what they're working with. I wouldn't worry. Well, I'll see your diet project.
And I thought that as well. I kind of forgot. I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, I was thinking like they only had case studies. Oh, they don't reference their studies. Like they said that the risk of cancer in people with highest intake of proteins was 4-fold higher, but they didn't say what it's higher than. And so they didn't reference it, but they did give us all these statistics.
Which you can be overwhelmed with the details and that's what happens is you try. I'm not saying this isn't legitimate, okay, but overwhelming is not something that the layperson can, and so they just are impressed. People, I'm not saying you, because you're developing those skills, you noticed it.
Yeah.
Okay, before you make a decision about worrying about your diet and are you eating too much protein, you want to know more. You want to ask more. So good for you. Okay. Julia.
Hi, I did a current event on how coffee was associated, in a recent study it was found that coffee was associated with improved survival in metastatic colorectal cancer patients. And for those of you who don't know what metastatic means, it basically means that the cancer has spread beyond like the colon and the large intestine in that area. But in this study that was published on September 17th, so just last week, a large group of patients found that consuming a few extra cups of coffee per day was associated with longer survival and lower risk of the cancer worsening. And this research was done at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, and a few other organizations also reported on this study. There are about 1,100 patients, and they were all being treated for metastatic colorectal cancer. And those who reported 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day for their intake were likely to live longer overall and had they like kind of lengthened the time before their disease got really bad compared to those who were not drinking coffee at all. This again is just an association. They're not calling it a cause and effect relationship. Just between coffee drinking and reduced risk of cancer was just kind of looked at. Again, like correlation doesn't always equal causation. They're just kind of looking at this the relationship pretty much. So as a result, they did say that the study does not provide sufficient like grounds per se for recommending that people increase coffee intake, but it was just an interesting find given who they were studying. It was done by the Journal of the American Medical Association, their oncology unit. And again, they looked at these people who were being treated for colorectal cancer.
So they did diet records, they took that information and they found an association. It would be interesting to see what, and these are the kinds of things that get published. But they noted that it's an association and they're not making recommendations. It's just something what else is in the person's lifestyle that has them drinking more coffee? Were there other things going on? Does having more coffee mean what?
Exactly, yeah. And they put the study in the article, like an external link. I looked through a little bit of it, but again, they did discuss the fact that it's just an association. It's not, we're going to start recommending you drink 3 cups of coffee per day.
All right, very good. Thank you. And Allie.
Hi.
Hi.
So I was interested in, I saw actually a TikTok on someone who claimed that they were like a health influencer, and she was drinking this glass of lemon water. And I've already heard like a lot about it, so I was just kind of curious. And I wrote down all the things that she claimed, and she said it cleanses your liver, purifies the skin, makes you feel amazing. That the polyphenols have a lot of body benefits. They promote healthy cells and it freshens your breath. And there's even like celebrities claiming that it flushes toxins from the system, reduces your appetite, and tweaks the body's digestive processes in ways that block fat absorption. So all of this stems from a Japanese study that took place in 2008 that claimed that the lemon's polyphenols, which are just micronutrients with antioxidant properties, that they lessen weight gain and improve fat metabolism, which was a study done on mice who were fed a high-fat diet. So the study team released that the lemon polyphenols may stimulate the liver to produce enzymes that help block the absorption of dietary fats. And I think the article that I was reading said that it just kind of laid a foundation for people to kind of claim it as like one of the miracle foods.
Right.
And so again, like the study was done on mice, not on people. Another problem is that lemon water uses the juice of the lemon, not the rind of the lemon, is what the mice were consuming. And it's where most of the polyphenols are actually located. So even if you were to zest the rind into your lemon water, it would not be anywhere near the amount that the mice in the study were consuming. So you would need to eat an insane amount of lemon to see a difference. And ultimately, if you do believe that drinking lemon water suppresses your appetite, it's likely a placebo effect or like the result of just like drinking water.
So drink it because you like it, not because it has magical properties.
It was super interesting though, like all the way that they were feeding the mice different diets and that it was the lemon rind instead of the juice, because I have heard so many things
Right.
about squeeze lemon on like everything and it suppresses appetite.
Well, at the end of the semester, well, actually, in 2.5 weeks, I'm doing a half-hour presentation on the myth of detox. I don't know if I told you all this, and they're going to record it. So I think if I can get hold of their recording, this is the same thing I'm doing for them as what I wanted to do for you at the end of the semester, like the last week of the semester. I was going to cover this, so I'll talk about it. But I will certainly, if you have any questions before then, I'll answer those. So, all right, great. Let's see. I think I have some, let's see. Oh, Izzy, I forgot you. I'm so sorry. What do you have?
Yeah, I have an article. It's bringing a little like business aspect into it. It says the global pandemic has consumers increasing plant-based nutrition to strengthen immune systems. So like based on their marketing efforts, people think that these alternative proteins are better for them.
Mhm.
And it's looking at the stock prices of all of these companies. So
Oh my.
particularly Beyond Meat, their stock has tripled since the pandemic.
Wow.
It's leveled out a little bit now, but like in June, it was at an all-time high. And also Tyson Foods, that has a lot of plant-based options. Theirs have doubled. And it says that in 2019, there was $824 million invested into these alternative protein. And only in Q1 of 2020, there was $930 million invested. So a lot of people are going to these options now. And then something else that it talks about, which I didn't really look into, but it talks about a company called Else Nutrition, which is, they make like plant-based baby formula.
Oh.
Which, yeah, I didn't look into that, but I don't know if that's good or not. I don't think it would be good.
I mean, it should be fine. I don't know if it would be harder for an infant's GI tract. But if it's, I don't know, because it's a food, it's not a drug, so I don't know. Maybe it is regulated because unless it's being marketed as a supplement. I wouldn't know. I think if people want to go to plant-based diets, that's fine. But because you think it's going to stimulate your immune system, that's a terrible, terrible way to market it. That's disturbing because it's not going to, yeah. You want to boost your immune system, but get the flu shot. Sorry. Okay. Any other questions? All right, let's see. What do I have? Oh, I don't want to talk about this yet. I had your current events. Wait. Oh, here we go. This is what I wanted. Thank you for those of you that are posting. I wanted to answer some of these, and I will as we continue. So, Christy, are you here today? Aw. Is it true that fasting is not good for someone who's trying to...
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay, good. Hi. Is it true that fasting is, where people put their, where you're from. This has been kind of exciting. Is it true that fasting is not good for someone who's trying to build more muscle? What do you think?
I've always found out, I've always heard that it's not, but now, looking at all the what we even talked about earlier when we were doing the poll, I really think doesn't really have, a significant effect.
That fasting doesn't have an effect?
Yes.
It would depend on how long they're fasting. A 24-hour fast is not going to hurt anybody. I think that they should be hydrated, but if this goes on for a while, you're going to break down muscle mass.
Yeah, I was more talking about just intermittent fasting in your daily diet rather than a long multiple day fast. So I think if because it's kind of like, this is something I've just talked about with trainers, and a lot of them have recommended, like, if I wanted to like focus on strength building and building muscle, like not to do fasting, but I always like, I've read studies that show against it. So that's why I was interested in asking that.
Well, I would be curious what studies, what's being marketed as a study. If you wouldn't mind sending me one or two of the studies that you've looked at and reminding me why you're sending them to me, because I'm not sure what anything calls itself a study these days. So
yeah,
really,
I think,
was it an anecdote? Was it a case study?
I'm not sure if it was exactly like a scholarly study, but I think it was just like an article that's breaking down and just showing like how insignificantly intermittent fasting will affect your muscle. Like it really wouldn't change much as long as you're working on building muscle.
And I don't know, again, I don't know where that information's from, so I don't know.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find them again, and if so, I'll send them over to you.
Okay, thanks. Just remind me why. Remind me I asked you to send them to me.
Yes.
Okay, Miami Beach. Is that you, Tori, or is this somebody else from Miami Beach? Because I need to have your name so I know that it's you, if I'm keeping track. But do collagen supplements work? No. Why?
That's me, Professor, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, okay. So why do you think, well, let me first ask this. What is collagen?
I don't know. I just feel like all these people are like putting it in their coffee and their smoothies and things, saying that it promotes like hair growth and soft skin and strong nails and whatever.
So collagen is a protein. What happens when protein hits the acid of your stomach? It begins to break down. The same thing when it hits the heat in your coffee, although it depends on how hot it is, so I shouldn't say that. They break down, they get denatured in the stomach. Those amino acids that make up the collagen, once they're broken down, they don't know that they're supposed to improve your hair or your skin. So no, they don't work.
That's very interesting.
Yes, and what's interesting is that you folks know this, or you have access to that information, right? Because that's what we've talked about. Unless protein supplements are what are called enteric coated, which means that they're coated with something that resists the acid in the stomach, they're all going to be broken down. They're not going to be absorbed. I mean, they're not going to be used as collagen. They don't know where they're supposed to go. They're amino acids. They'll go where the body needs them. They're not going to be targeted anywhere. Okay, so, is it true that cooked vegetables are better for digestion than raw? It depends on the person. It depends on the vegetable. Some nutrients are better absorbed with heat when they've been heated, others not. So it depends on the food. Eat the food because you like it. Don't prepare it any differently, because as long as talked in Module 2, you're eating a variety of foods over time, you should get the nutrients you need. Okay, Vicki? Okay. And Kyle, is it true that males having soy? No. It's not incredibly dangerous. It's not at all dangerous. If it increased your estrogen production and made you more sensitive, I think that would be a good thing. Does that answer your question? But I have heard that, and no, the soy that's in, I mean, soy contains what are called plant estrogens, and no, there's not enough. I don't know how much you'd have to eat. I should be wrong. I'm sure there's somebody out there who could eat enough, but I'm not gonna have you worry about that. So no, eat soy, don't eat soy. Don't worry about it. It's not gonna make you grow breasts or lose your hair. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you before we play with this little toy that I made about kwashiorkor. Can anybody, what was I talking about when you saw kwashiorkor in the video? I have you all in a little part of my screen now, so you just need to say something. I don't know who's there.
You were talking about protein deficiency.
Right. So people say that they don't get enough protein and that they're going to be protein deficient. And I want to give you this example of a condition that is actually what happens with protein deficiency. And it's a spectrum from what's called marasmus, which is protein and calorie malnutrition, to kwashiorkor, which is where they're getting calories but not protein, or not good quality protein, and what happens. And kwashiorkor is something I explained in the video that occurs, we see in third world countries, but also in poor areas anywhere in the world where people don't have access to food. Kwashiorkor is Ghanaian for the evil spirit that infects the first child when the second child is born. So imagine, if you will, a child's being born and they start nursing and they are getting this complete nutritional food for, let's say, the first 2 years of their life. They're getting all the nutrients they need, all the amino acids, and they're growing. And now the second child is born. And what happens is this first child gets put on a rice drink or rice gruel. And rice is an incomplete protein. So what happens is, over time, this child begins to develop a protein deficiency because the protein that they're getting is incomplete. So first they begin. Okay, could you just, could you mute yourself, whoever's talking? Whoops, what happened here? I lost my magic. Where'd my, so what happens is, one of the first things is that the child stops growing because protein is used for tissue, for growth, for repair. The child stops growing. They start to get fatigued because their body is now breaking down protein and using it for energy, but it's not, so they sit down. They're not moving. Their hair grows in, if it grows at all, because hair is keratin, without color, because the color in keratin, the melanin, is a protein. What happens is that they begin, I think in the video I showed you a picture of a child with kwashiorkor who had a big belly and who looked chubby. Why? Because they had a fluid imbalance. We have protein inside the cell that helps keep proteins in the cell. We have proteins outside the cell. They maintain balance. But when that protein is being used for energy because they're not getting adequate calories, that protein is sacrificing that function of fluid balance. It's being broken down. Those amino acids are being used for energy, and that fluid can no longer be held inside the cell, so it moves out into the surrounding space. Why do they have big bellies and big ankles? Because they're sitting, and that's where the fluid is accumulating. They don't have protein to make antibodies to fight infection. So if they get sick, if they got, say, I don't know, German measles, something, they would die because they can't make antibodies to fight infection. What also happens, let me see, proteins, we use proteins to transport fat. They begin, one of the things that can happen is that they would develop what's called a fatty liver, because if, let's say, they got some nutrients, if they could even digest them, they couldn't transport the fat out of their liver, and so it would accumulate in their liver. So when we looked at the different functions of protein, with energy being used for energy at the bottom, because the body doesn't want to use amino acids for energy, because when amino acids are being used for energy, it is sacrificing all the other functions of protein. And this is an example of where that happens. Okay, so that's what I wanted to tell you about kwashiorkor. Any questions? So now I have something I want you to help me with. Can you open up? I sent you the link to this Jamboard. Can people open it up? I have to open it up too. And I need some volunteers. I need to see if this works. So please open it up. And okay, Mylin, you're gonna volunteer. I need to have Sarah, 2 more, I think. No, 3 more. I need 5 volunteers. Okay, so this, oh, but what's this about besides a toy that I want to play with? I want to show you how protein is synthesized. That's something else that we do. We make proteins from amino acids. So I don't know. Okay, all right. So I need somebody to be my messenger RNA. So who wants to come down here and be the messenger RNA? I don't know what that looks like. So can somebody click on the mRNA and be that? I don't know how you do that. I've never used this before. Okay, who just clicked on messenger RNA? I think I have enough volunteers. Who's my messenger? Can you tell me? Whoa. Okay, well, and now I need somebody over here on the left to be, I need 4 transfer RNAs. Okay, so I have a bunch of volunteers. Okay, so Kevin, I would like you to go over to GCC and be there. Yael, I'd like you to go to AGT and be there. Let's see, whoops, what did I do? Wait a minute, let me go back. Okay, I need somebody to go to CCT. Gabby, could you be CCT?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Jackie, please be ATT. Okay, now imagine, if you will, I am the DNA. I live here inside the nucleus, okay? And what I need to do now is make a protein. So who's my messenger RNA? Did somebody volunteer to be my messenger RNA? Allie, can you be my messenger?
Yeah.
Can you click on the messenger and just come over here to the nucleus?
Yeah, 1 second.
Can you make it move? Does it move?
Did it move?
Yes. Okay. So you are now in the, well, actually you've been created in the nucleus, but that's enough. And I am giving you this program. All right. These are 4 amino acids that are going to make a protein. And what you need to do, but I'll help you because I'm here, is we're going to take this amino acid chain to the ribosome, which is what is the organelle in the middle of the cytoplasm. So let's go over to the ribosome. Okay. It is on the ribosome that amino acids come from the cytoplasm. That's what all this stuff out here is the cytoplasm. The amino acids come to the ribosome and attach themselves in a specific order as dictated by the DNA. All right, so the DNA has given the messenger RNA a program. The DNA has transcribed a program onto the messenger RNA. The messenger RNA, thank you, Allie, you're done now, has taken that information to the ribosome. Now, in a specific order as dictated by the DNA, the transfer RNAs are going to bring their amino acids to the ribosome and create a protein. So, whoever has Jackie, is that you with ATT? Bring this over here to the ribosome and put it next to the ATT. Can you do that?
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so just put it there. Okay, and this was Jackie. She brought it over here. She did her job. Now she's going back to the cytoplasm. Now, who's, Gabby, is that you, CCT? Okay, very good. So Gabby brings, I'll be you too, brings it over here. Oh, I was wrong. Take it back. It's not the right order. We had a mutation there. That caused a mutation, but the cell is able to correct it. Which amino acid should go next? GCC. So bring GCC over to the ribosome. That's it. Okay, we corrected that mutation because the cell has enzymes that can correct. This was a correctable mutation. All right, now what's the next amino acid? Now. CCT?
CCT.
Come on down. And last, Yael, bring it over. All right. We have now created a polypeptide chain on the ribosome in the cell. That polypeptide chain will now leave the ribosome and go throughout its journey in the cell to make a protein. That's my toy. What do you think? I used to do it with ping pong balls, but you know, global pandemic. So, okay, thank you for your patience. So this is an example. This is I had a student refer to it as a 3rd grade activity. It was a little more complicated, but where you have DNA being transcribed onto the messenger inside the nucleus. Whoops, and then, okay. It then leaves the nucleus, travels to the ribosome, where that information gets translated into protein. One by one, the amino acids come to the ribosome in a specific order dictated by the DNA. All right, that's my, thank you. All right. Now I want to divide you into groups. All right, I have 5 groups. Questions about my little demo? Do you all understand protein synthesis? If not, I'd be happy to explain it to you. I also think I have on Canvas some short videos about that. What I'd like to do is divide you into 5 groups. I posted, I think I sent you the link for the questions. Does anybody not have the questions? So I'm going to put you in 5 groups. Each group, answer your questions and take about 10 minutes. They're a little more detail, and I'll come around and see how you're doing, okay? And I'll see you 5 groups. And I'm going to go get another cup of coffee. Coffee. Pause. Okay, thank you.
So why might a poison control center recommend giving a child milk if they have swallowed poison? So the first thing that you should do is call the poison control center. And then depending on the poison, milk contains protein that can be denatured. So thereby it induces vomiting for the child. So instead of denaturing the poison, instead of like focusing on the poison, the milk added to the body will be denatured there instead of the poison.
Right. So the idea is that because if you induce, depending on the poison, they may recommend inducing vomiting. Now, I might be wrong about this. So, always, you're right. The first thing is to call poison control. But if you induce vomiting with some poisons, they could denature the lining of the esophagus, because along with acid and along with heat, poison can denature protein. So like you said, brilliant. By consuming milk, then the idea is that maybe the poison will denature the protein in the milk, and then you can induce vomiting without worrying about denaturing the esophagus. Okay, thank you. What's the other one?
What is the difference between prebiotics and probiotics, and what is the structure of prebiotics?
Okay.
So probiotics are living strains of bacteria that add to the population of good bacteria in your digestive system, whereas prebiotics are food for the good bacteria. Specifically, they're specialized plant fibers.
Okay, so I see that I didn't ask that, so I'll ask you, just reflect back on what I was saying. Why do people take probiotic supplements, and is that a good thing? Does anybody, let me just throw this out to the class. Do you know anybody who takes probiotic supplements? Yeah?
Anytime I would start to feel sick, my mom would tell me just to take a probiotic.
Any kind of sick?
Yeah, she was like, runny nose, take a probiotic, anything.
I also do.
Okay.
I think a lot of people take probiotics without taking prebiotics, and they don't really understand that if you're going to take one, you need the other.
And I'm sort of convinced that you don't need probiotics, because unless
I'm also convinced about that.
Unless they're enteric coated. And can any of you remind me what enteric coated means?
That they don't break down with the stomach acid.
Right, that they resist the acid in the stomach, that the probiotics aren't destroyed in the stomach, because stomach acid is part of our immune response. It's part of our immune system. And your stomach acid doesn't know whether that's good bacteria or bad bacteria entering the stomach. So it could destroy it. Whereas prebiotics don't get digested. They're alpha-linked glucose molecules. So now we have to come back a little on that whole, we break down alpha-linked glucose molecules, but we don't digest some. they resist enzymatic hydrolysis, and they get into the large intestine where the bacteria break them down and produce more bacteria to what your body needs. We're all individual, and we may have different strains of healthy bacteria in our gut. I don't know what's out there. I know what the common ones are. I know what's recommended, but I don't know if that's what everybody needs. And again, bacteria can get broken down in the gut, whereas prebiotics may resist the hydrolysis, make it to the large intestine, and create bacteria there. If you could excuse me for a second, my sister from Israel is calling me. I'm just going to tell her I'm going to call her back and get 1 percentage point off my final course grade. Hi, can I call you back? I'm in class. Okay, bye. Didn't hear her. I just hung up. Don't have your phone on in class, but we're not in class. We're in our homes. Okay. Was there anything else to that question? So in terms of probiotic supplements, your mother tells you to take them. I don't want to go against parents, but ask her why. I would be curious as what Sasha, why are you taking probiotics?
So the first time I started taking them was when I actually visited my Lynn in Asia, and I was like, I don't know how my body is going to react to so many different foods because I was there for like a month.
Sure,
and
sure.
It really helped. Like I had no issues. I was also taking like these little charcoal pills, but that's besides the point.
Oh, that's
but now I started taking them daily because I just feel like it helps me feel better, like bloating and regularity. So I feel like I noticed a difference. I think maybe my pills also have prebiotics though.
And you don't want to know because it seems to be working. We have these biases and we don't want to Yael.
I usually take them with antibiotics, like the pills, but lately, and I think those do help. Like I have really bad reactions to antibiotics, but lately I've been taking like yogurts that have probiotics and I don't see a difference at all. Like I don't think daily they work. I think before antibiotics or with antibiotics, they make a difference.
But how if the acid in the stomach destroys it? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, my doctor always tells me like when you start antibiotics, just take it like instead. Like when they say like eat a meal with your antibiotics, he says eat like yogurt with probiotics or eat something with probiotics.
Well, right. And I don't give out medical advice. Okay. All right. Well, show me the data. Okay. Group 3.
Okay, so the question is, do bodybuilders need to consume protein supplements? Why or why not? We said no, they don't need to consume protein supplements. They just need to like increase their diet with about like 7 to 8 additional grams of protein. So in doing so, one would gain like a pound of muscle in 2 weeks.
Okay, and then I had the question about fiber.
Yeah, so this one was soluble fiber. So foods like oats, beans, and flaxseed. So like plant foods, and soluble fiber binds to the small intestine. And because fiber is not absorbed in the small intestine, once it's inside the small intestine, the fiber attaches to the cholesterol particles and it prevents them from entering your bloodstream and traveling to other parts of the body. And it's recommended to eat 5 to 10 grams of fiber a day to reduce cholesterol and stay hydrated, of course.
Really? The 5 to 10 grams of soluble fiber a day? Or total fiber?
That's a good question.
Okay, well, I don't know about that, but what I will say about the binding to cholesterol, what the soluble fiber does is it binds to bile. And bile is made from cholesterol. Okay, so it binds tightly to the bile and then the fiber gets excreted in the feces. And so then your body needs to make more bile, and it does that by having the liver, or by the body drawing on cholesterol in the blood and in the liver, made in the liver to make new bile. So it is binding to cholesterol, but that cholesterol is found in the bile that's being used to break down fat. And so for some people who are, I'm going to say genetically predisposed, because I ate a ton of soy and oats for a year and it didn't budge my cholesterol. So I'm just not a responder to that. But for folks who are, soluble fiber can help lower, may help lower their cholesterol. And it's because of the bile, binding to bile. And it might bind to other stuff, but the bile. Okay. All right. Thank you. Group 4, nitrogen balance and diverticulosis, two totally unrelated topics.
So we kind of went over this in the polls in the beginning of class, but positive nitrogen balance essentially is the intake of nitrogen into the body, and that's greater than the loss of nitrogen from the body. An example of this is pregnancy, as we stated prior. And then negative nitrogen balance, on the other hand, is when the output exceeds the input of nitrogen, and this can be associated with things like burns, tissue injuries, fevers, and other diseases.
Okay.
And then we said nitrogen equilibrium is the nitrogen balance when the intake and loss are equal. And then we said a common example people use to get to this equilibrium is whey protein because it helps offset nitrogen deficit.
Oh, what does whey protein do?
It should immediately increase their complete protein intake to offset nitrogen deficit.
What was that? What question was that answering?
An example of like what people use to reach nitrogen equilibrium.
Oh, I'm sorry. That wasn't the question. I mean, I wasn't clear. Somebody who is in nitrogen balance would be somebody who's neither losing.
Well, we talked about bodybuilders.
So they might be in positive nitrogen balance because they're consuming more protein than they're excreting because they're building tissue.
Well, they, like what we read is like bodybuilders who like reach a point where they're not gaining any more muscle are typically in nitrogen equilibrium.
Oh, okay. Then are they still building muscle?
Well, technically no. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right, then let's stop calling them bodybuilders. Let's call them body muscle maintainers. No, I know.
Okay.
So it has to do with tissue, you know, whether you're synthesizing tissue or losing tissue or maintaining tissue. So somebody in nitrogen equilibrium is maintaining. They're neither synthesizing, or the amount of tissue that they're synthesizing equals the amount of nitrogen that they're losing. They're basically in balance, whereas positive means they're synthesizing new tissue, negative means they're losing tissue. Okay, so yeah, it wasn't food related. Thank you. I'm sorry I wasn't clear about that. And what was the diverticulosis? Diverticulosis. Now you have me saying it. Who had that one?
So for the losis, it's usually asymptomatic and you can see some symptoms, but with the litis, there's pain and tenderness and fever and nausea and chills and cramps in the lower abdomen, rectal bleeding and diarrhea.
Wonderful, huh? So what are diverticula?
What'd you say? Sorry.
What are the diverticula that can get inflamed or be maintained? Ah.
They're little pouches that can form in the large intestine.
Right. Right. They're little out pouches in the large intestine that hypothetically stuff could get stuck in them. When I worked as an outpatient dietitian, the gastroenterologist I work with would tell me that people were afraid to eat strawberries or cucumbers because they were afraid that the seeds would get stuck in their diverticula. The only thing that I've ever heard can get stuck in these pouches is unpopped popcorn kernels that people eat. People who have diverticulosis, when they can eat anything, should not be afraid. And the only reason you shouldn't eat unpopped popcorn kernels is because it can break your teeth. Oh, sorry, that was just me. But you shouldn't eat unpopped popcorn kernels anyway. All right, so those are, I guess I didn't ask for dietary recommendation. Oh, I did.
Yeah, you did. So for
Okay.
diverticulosis, there's no need to change the diet most of the times. But for diverticulitis, doctors recommend you eat like bland or liquid foods to reduce inflammation and a low fiber diet at the beginning to ease the intestine.
Right.
And then it might require medication or surgery if it's really bad.
Right. So we call that bowel rest, letting the bowel rest, a low residue, low fiber diet. Otherwise, with diverticulosis, high fiber, don't worry about seeds or anything like that. That's not a concern. Okay, very good. And last but not least, recovery from kwashiorkor. I didn't go. I almost went over that when I was talking about it, and then I remembered we had a question. So who's the speaker for that group? Hello.
I can talk for a group.
Okay.
So hold on, let me just pull it up here. So what we discussed is kwashiorkor, with malnutrition, what we discussed earlier. The protein deficiency in lactase is a protein that needs to digest lactose, and the child must intake protein before any dairy products. So with kwashiorkor, you need to be careful of how you introduce the foods into the child's life, because we were reading that they could get diagnosed with the refeeding syndrome. Yes. So we suggest with first giving carbs, then vitamins, and then minerals, then give protein, and then introduce dairy last. So they might develop lactose intolerance if dairy is introduced too fast into their refeeding, time. And then, it says we wrote that it involves life-threatening electrolyte and fluid shifts that occur with rapid refeeding of malnourished individuals. And then as a result, they may need to avoid milk products or take enzymes so that their body can handle milk. And then to answer the second question, we talked about how fiber absorbs water in digestion, but then also undigested fiber creates bulk, so the muscles in the intestine can push waste out of the body.
Okay, right. So we don't digest fiber because it's beta-linked glucose molecules. So it moves from the small intestine into the large intestine. Right. And then and then we need water, and that's where that sponge analogy might come in. I just wanted to, with the refeeding syndrome, that was actually among the first places it was seen was when soldiers went into concentration camps and found the victims, Holocaust victims, and they wanted to feed them, and people died within days of being given food because they didn't realize right away that you couldn't start giving people whole foods, that they needed to very carefully bring them back to nutritional status. And so first you want to give them fluids and electrolytes to bring their blood pressure up and to help create and maintain electrolyte balance. Then you start with the carbs, right? And then protein, and hopefully, that will help them start to synthesize the enzymes, let's say to digest dairy if they can. And then also with protein, fat is last because among other things, with dairy fat, you need to have the proteins to make lipoproteins to transport the fat throughout the body. So, all right. Oh my gosh. So let me just let me share, see what I got before we go. Because again, open up. All right. Very good. Very good. Thank you. All right. So coming up, I'll be in my office from 12:30 to 1:30. I haven't talked to each group yet. Those of you that haven't been in, please come see me to talk about your groups. Your journals will be due on Friday. Next week, we start carbohydrate storage and disorders. Read the case studies. I'll post the questions, and your individual and annotated bibliographies are due on the 30th. Bye now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Be well.
Have a good weekend.